And we welcome you to this edition of Night Shift. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Eric Lopez alongside Bryson Turner. We're working on a holiday week because just because it's a holiday doesn't mean UCF sports stops, folks. And boy, it's not slowing down. Coming up on this edition, we'll preview, get you set for UCF BYU on Saturday as football tries to get bowl eligible. Another UCF team unexpectedly with a stunning win on Wednesday night perhaps puts themselves in the conversation to make the tournament in postseason. That's, of course, UCF Volleyball. We'll break that down. We'll recap UCF men's and women's soccer's incredible seasons that came to an end a week ago. And men's basketball, with a nice win over Pitt, gets set here to maybe perhaps make a nice run here in the non-conference before Big 12 play gets going next month. That's all coming up on this edition of Night Shift. Of course, you can follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com. And, of course, on YouTube on the Night Shift, where you can watch some of these episodes, as well as on all the social media platforms, including Instagram and the X. Bryson, it's the holidays. Everybody on the staff is on the holidays with their families, and it's only fitting you and I are hanging out here.
Yes, hey, I mean, it's all fun and games when you and I get to yap about UCF sports. Holidays all about doing things with people you care about, and that this is what we care about, care about. So let's have some fun doing it.
All right, we're in for a busy weekend. Let's first start with football. UCF coming off the win against Oklahoma State, 17-14 at the Bounce House. Stephen Brown and I recapped that game. You can watch it on the YouTube channel, Night Shift, for that. Stephen Brown wrote the recap for that as well on the blackandgoldbanneret.com. Puts UCF now at 5-6 going into Provo, where they're a heavy underdog, 16 to 18 point dog going into that game with against BYU. Bryson, you have been you were at the game. You also been covering the Scott Frost presser this on Monday for your coverage on SI. Give me your thoughts. What are you thinking going into this BYU game?
I think that this is a game where UCF has everything to get, nothing to lose and everything to gain. This is a when you look at this is a very David versus Goliath matchup. I think BYU is next to Texas Tech, the class of the Big 12 right now. They have the conference's leading rusher in LJ Martin, who has been honestly the class of the Big 12 when it comes to running the ball. I think that's going to be their primary weapon. So the considering that they got back Malachi Lawrence and Nigel Kelly now will be coming back again after being injured. They're gonna need him after for a weapon like LJ Martin, but they're no stranger to passing the ball either. Bear Bachmeyer just doing a solid job there. Not as much as Baron Morton has done for Texas Tech, so maybe there could be some chances to strike when it comes to the passing D. But considering how LJ Martin has done and considering how, of course, UCF's offense really needed some big breaks in order to beat Oklahoma State, I think the defense is really going to need to come up big once again, and they're just going to have a very tall order with going up against someone like LJ Martin.
LJ Martin might be the Big 12 Player of the Year winner if he has a big game here as well. I mean, he's been the big part of the BYU offense. It's dominated with a good, strong offensive line. If you read into Pro Football Focus and some of the metrics, some would say BYU has the best offensive line in the Big 12, Bryson. So it's going to be an interesting matchup for this UCF defensive line to match it up against BYU's offensive line. You mentioned the quarterback. He's a freshman. He wasn't even supposed to be the starter. Remember, the starter last year in Retlaf left. There was a lot of, Connor,
Yeah, Parker Retzlaff, yeah.
he left because of honor codeine or whatever. Ended up going to Tulane, which they're in position to possibly make the playoff if they win the American. So, but nonetheless, he's done a nice job managing this team. I don't think they're as explosive offensively as, say, a Texas Tech, but they kind of ground you to death. And they did that at Cincinnati in their most recent win. Their defense is pretty solid. This is a big game for BYU in a lot of ways. A win would clinch them a berth into the Big 12 championship, which eluded them a year ago. The other thing is they've got to be careful here. They've got to earn some bonus points here. They are stuck right now on the outside looking in for the college football playoff. They are in the 11th spot in the rankings, in the playoff ranking that came out this week. That's the first team out, but right behind them is Miami, who moved up to 12 and jumped Utah. If Miami were to beat Pittsburgh this weekend, who's ranked, BYU may have to look impressive against UCF just to stay ahead of them, and really try to impress some people if they want to stay ahead of Miami. And they're probably going to need some help to get into the playoff as an at large. Honestly, the best route for BYU to make the playoff is likely to win against UCF and then win against Texas Tech, assuming it's Texas Tech. Texas Tech still has to win their game against West Virginia to lock up their berth into the Big 12 title game at Jerry's World. That might be the path for BYU because their resume does not strike anybody as impressive. So I only say all that because we're not going to have to worry. We're not going to get a team that's not going to be motivated, is my point, Bryce.
Oh yes, I mean I said it at my top at the top, which is that UCF has nothing to lose and everything to gain gain. Meanwhile, BYU has a lot to lose if they mess this game up because they are trying to make the college football playoff. So this is going to be an opportunity for UCF to just go completely ham with it because in the end even if you lose this game, it's still an improvement over last season. You got an extra win out of it. The culture change that we've seen with Scott Frost coming back, I think is also a huge win considering the word, how things have changed since the previous coaching staff. I think it provides a good foundation for later. And let's face it, I mean, and UCF has pretty much nailed 2 to 3 aspects of the game this time. Unfortunately, the one aspect they didn't do well and they did not do great in at all. So there is a foundation here for a competitive Big 12 team. It's just that there wasn't, you know, things that worked this time around. But I think the foundation is very much there. And now it's all about just trying to see if you can end this season off with a high note for these teams.
Mother Nature will not be UCF's friend. As we record this Wednesday night, granted, weather could always change on the forecast. I believe temperatures will be in the 30s, maybe 40s, with 30 to 50% chance of precipitation, which could be rain, could also be snow at the game. It is worth noting kickoff is an 11 a.m. local time, 1 Eastern. The game will be televised on ESPN2. Matt Schumacher and Dustin Fox will be the crew for that on the television side. Some surprised by the early start. I wonder if the weather perhaps influenced some of that. I did notice all the Big 12 games on Saturday are pretty much early. The following week, the Big 12 championship games at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central Time at Jerry's World. So I wonder if the Big 12 and the TV partners kind of did this on purpose so that way whoever gets to the Big 12 title game, i.e. if it's Texas Tech and BYU, that they both have equal amount of time of rest. You didn't want a team, for example, playing at noon and then the other team playing at 10 o'clock at night. So I wonder if that played a role in the TV slots, not to mention there's obviously some marquee games later in the day in the other conferences. But the weather's going to be interesting, Bryson. I think UCF can hang with BYU. I think if the defense, but they got to get off to a good start. One of the disappointing things about the Oklahoma State game is even the defense got off to a bad start. Gave up that long drive to Oklahoma State to start the ball game in the first quarter. Was down 14-0 at halftime, and you were kind of shaking your head. They cannot afford to do that against a team of the caliber of BYU because they won't be able. This is not a team that's going to come from behind against a team like BYU. If you fall behind against BYU, like you did against Oklahoma State, it's going to be a long game. In fact, it'll be more like the Texas Tech game a few weeks back in Lubbock.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, even for a group like the defense, who has not exactly shot itself in the foot a lot with penalties like the offense has had this season, if you're not able to stop BYU, then they're gonna run all over you all game. So, th- and this is an offense also. Like, look, BYU getting off to a good start might not be as much of an issue if there was an offense that you could get into a shootout with them with. Like, if this was a 2017 UCF offense, then we'd be like, okay, we're probably in for a shootout in this game. But 2017 offense, this is not. And so if you are end up getting into a deficit, it's going to be very hard for UCF to be able to crawl out. That's what made Oklahoma State so special, is the fact that the offense was actually able to crawl out of it. But that was because thanks to some huge big plays, particularly from Dylan Wade at the tight end spot. So that so I'm not counting on that happening in Provo, hostile territory, hostile weather conditions. So yeah, the defense is definitely going to need to come up big with this one.
But if they, on the opposite end, to your point, if they can get off to a good start, take the lead, you put some pressure on the freshman quarterback. To me, you've got to put pressure on Bachmeyer to make plays with his arm,
Yeah,
right?
get some, also get some turnovers too. I
with
think
with
those.
the weather, that's going to be even more imperative. I think for both teams is to how do they protect the football with if the football is slick due to the cold weather or the precipitation that may be coming to that game.
Oh
So
yes, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see the role that Malachi Lawrence and Nigel Kelly will play, because while they have been on the field since they've been injured, they haven't exactly been as productive as they once were pre-injury. So that will certainly be something to look out for there as well. But of course, Cole Kozlowski has been on it so far this season as well. Philip Dunham has been an interception machine. Braden Marshall got that game-winning interception against Oklahoma State, so he's back up and at it again. It'll be interesting to see how this defense is able to hold up, because they're definitely going to be, I think, the key for UCF to be victorious, as probably Noe Rueas. It'll be interesting to see how the kicking could hold up, considering the precipitation. I wouldn't count on it, but I mean, hey, if the wind is faint enough that you're able to make a kick, I think that you probably want to go for that.
should be interesting. 1 o'clock kick. There is if UCF were to win this game and pull the upset. Number one, likely
Bowl
not.
game.
Well, they would go to a bowl game, no doubt. Number two, it would likely kill the Big 12 chances of being a multi-bid league. Not sure the Big 12 will be thrilled about that. Don't expect any calls from the officials, by the way. Just saying. But number three, Scott Frost would get an extra year added to his contract. Remember, that was part of the incentives. If they made a bowl game this year, Scott Frost would get an extra year into his contract, Bryson. So there is motives here, so there is ramifications for this result.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, we said at the top of this season that bowl eligibility is would be considered a successful season. I mean, considering what we've seen this year, I still think personally the season is still successful in a way because of the just complete change in the cultural foundation. But I know a lot of fans don't really care about that all that much because they don't see it all the time. And so they want bowl eligible, and so UCF has the opportunity to do it this time. And hey, I mean, if they are able to get there against a team like BYU, then this will be able to at least add a little bit of a sweet note to a season that has certainly been a struggle in certain aspects for UCF
I'll
fans.
say this: they pull the upset against BYU, changes the narrative a lot. I mean, it changes the narrative. If they could pull it off, I'm not so sure they will. I think BYU wins. I am curious on the weather, Bryson. You're going to be following this game Saturday. I'm a little preoccupied, as we'll get to a little bit later, but I do think the weather is something to watch. I am very interested to see. You got to think BYU has the advantage with whether, the weather advantage. I'm not sure how many kids in the UCF team are like excited about playing in 30, 40-degree weather, but sometimes weather can neutralize a perceived, gap between two teams. And I think this defense for UCF is capable. I really do think this defense can match up with BYU if the offense can complement it. And that's been
Mhm.
part of the problem this year,
Yeah.
as we've
Hmm.
seen at times. So I'm not going to be optimistic. I mean, you're wearing blue, so I don't know if that's a sign of what you think is going to happen Saturday there, but
Oh, please. This is Citronaut blue, not BYU blue,
I don't
Eric.
know.
This, I think the key is going to end up being on the passing game, because that's what saved UCF against Oklahoma State. The Wade Charles got a lot of attention from Taven Jackson. Taven Jackson's health, by the way, I think also could be a certain factor as well. We saw him limping a little bit. during that one play. Now he says he's fine, and I believe him on that. Taven Jackson, you can't fault him for not be for keep going out there despite everything he's gone through this season. I He's connected well with Wade and Charles and Dylan Wade, I've noticed, and I think that those two receivers are probably going to be the biggest advantage for the UCF in this one. Interesting to note, actually, Dylan Wade currently leading the Knights receiving game. This will be the first if Dylan Wade is able to stay that way upon the season's closure. This will be the first time since UCF moved up to D1 that a tight end would lead the team in receiving. So that's a little fun fact to watch out for with this one, because I think both Wade and Charles will probably be the biggest key players on offense for UCF in this one to maybe make an upset happen.
UCF BYU, 1 o'clock kick on ESPN2. Again, if you want to see it on television, you obviously have the radio call with Mark Daniels, Gary Paris, and Scott Adams out in Provo, Utah, in the cold conditions. Bryson Turner will be following the game and writing about it for SI after the game, whereas our very own Stephen Brown will be covering that game as well.
I do have some breaking news actually on the BYU UCF game, Eric. Defensive tackle Derek LeBlanc has been ruled out for that game. Linebacker Jaden McDonald has been ruled out as well. These are different from several players that have been ruled out previously, like Scott Frost has talked about. Ja'Carri Brown and Cam Fancher are both ruled out. Carter Miller is ruled out. Keegan Smith on the offensive line is also ruled out again. So a few players there, a couple of new ones as well rolled out for UCF in this BYU game right here.
So stay tuned to Black Gold Banneret for the latest UCF and BYU on Saturday. No live post game afterwards. Spoiler, we're all busy. As we'll explain in a minute. We may do a night shift wrap at some point on Saturday. We may just break it down early on the week. We'll see. What depends on all our schedules. The reason for this is because the majority of us are going to be at Addition Financial Arena on Saturday at the same time as the football game. UCF men's basketball will be playing VMI, 1 o'clock tip. There, UCF coming off a win over Quinnipiac, 102-91, and a bit of a shootout. UCF, though, off to a good start here, Bryson. You were in Daytona a week ago when UCF knocked off Pittsburgh for their second Power Conference win of the season, following up that A&M win on the road for Johnny Dawkins. They were down at the half on Tuesday night against Quinnipiac, a team that is favored to win the MAC with 2 A's. And beat Pitt, by the way, prior to this game. But UCF was able to kind of rebound and win that game, winning by 11. Your thoughts on Johnny Dawkins' ball club here as we sit?
This team is really coming together to start this season. It's this season. Coach Dawkins has talked about the strength of his team being in their numbers and their depth, and they have shown that over the course of this week. Carmelo Pacheco has been a solid 3-point threat off the bench. Chris Johnson as well. You have Jeremy Fomena, who broke out in the Quinnipiac game, 18 points. He came into that game with 17 points on the season, by the way. And of course, and then John Bull, who, yes, he's been in the starting lineup, but he hasn't exactly, played as many minutes as some of the other starting five. But he has been very much improving over this season. He got 13 points, going a 6 of 7 with six from the floor with 6 rebounds against Quinnipiac, and they've started to become more consistent as well. I remember, like, before the Pittsburgh game, they were a very streaky team shooting, where they could make like five in a row, then they'd miss five in a row. I haven't really seen a lot of that this time. I mean, as this time, at least as much as before. Meanwhile, on defense, they managed to keep Quinnipiac to, I think, I think they went 1 of 17 from the floor at one point in the second half. So major improvement defensively right there, and really is taking advantage of their length as well. They've been dominant in the paint these last couple of games, and I think that that's I think going to be a big way for them to keep going through this, at least this non-conference slate anyway. So I think that if anything, this non-conference slate has shown that this is a very competent UCF basketball team. Beating Pittsburgh and A&M aren't exactly, the strongest P4 conference members, but the fact that you beat them as well as mid-major NCAA tournament threats in Oakland and Quinnipiac, I think this definitely shows that this is a team that can make some noise and maybe steal some games in the Big 12. I'll be interested to see if they can at least get through this last stretch before conference play.
Themis Folks, 13 assists, which, by the way, is a personal career high for him. It's the most assists by a UCF player, Bryson. I think you brought this up in about a decade. So it's Brandon
Yes.
Goodwin, who
Yep.
played at UCF and then transferred to, I believe, I want to say it was Florida Gulf Coast or something. Had a cup of coffee in the NBA. That was during the Donnie Jones era. But Themis Folks, 13 assists, a career high, averaging over 7 assists per game, among the top 30 in the country in assists. And is really, I think, he's a pass first. He's an old school point guard, pass first, shoot second point guard. And I think that's fed off on this team, Bryson, who's averaging over 18 assists per as a team. That's in the top 60 in the country. This team is a better passing team than last year's team, for example, which was played a lot of ISO, for example, in part because you had players like Keyshawn Hall, who's more of a better individual talent. I don't think there's a player as talented as a Keyshawn Hall on this team, but as a result, their shot selection I really like. They don't just chuck up 30, 35 threes. They look for quality shots. I think they moved the basketball, which I think was something of Coach Dawkins' emphasis this offseason. But I think Themis Folks is coming to his own, and he's a key factor in this ball club there. And the turnovers were down. Only had 3 turnovers in the win there compared to the 13 assists.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Another thing I think you talk about shot selection, UCF is actually in a very dominant lead in terms of team 3-point field goal percentage. I think that the fact that this is a very big passing team, I think also has the consequence of them being a major threat from beyond the arc, because if you can get that quick pass off to somebody who's open beyond the arc, and they've been landing them more often than not, 47.9% from beyond the arc. The Big 12 team that's after that, Kansas State at 42.9%. Very they're just chucking it from beyond the arc. Kansas State is. So this is a team that has now shown that it can be a beyond the arc threat and an in the paint threat. I know I can see why Johnny Dawkins has been very much preaching defense, because I think this team had the offense actually pretty nailed down to this point. As long as they don't get streaky with it.
They have more options as far as shooters on this team than I think they've ever had before. Riley Kugel can hit the 3. Folks can hit a 3. Burks can hit a 3. You mentioned Carmelo Pacheco, who's the best shooter on the team. He was one of the nation's best 3-point shooters last year when he played at Mount St. Mary's. So, and again, the passing's a factor.
Go.
The paint's been a positive development the last couple of games. I don't know how that will look once you get the competition goes up a different level. It was nice to see Fomina have the game that he did against Quinnipiac. If you can get something out of him and or John Bull inside for rim protection, I think that'll help the defense a little bit. Stidwell has been a double-double guy for them up front. There's still some questions there, though, that we got to see in the next few weeks before Big 12 play.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, don't forget Devin Cambridge down there as well. He's been doing good, crashing the glass as well. But I think if you're able to get something going with all of them, I think a combination of Stillwell, Bull, Cambridge, and Fomina, if you're able to get all four of those guys playing at a high level, then I think you'll be doing really good, just as far as getting into the glass and all of that nature as well. And John Bull, I mean, he's been I think, a revelation for this team. I know Dawkins has talked about him being a puppy, and as in, a young dog right now. And I feel like we're seeing him growing up right before our eyes right now, because I've seen a marked improvement from him since the beginning of the season.
Well, for people that don't know the story, he started out at Ole Miss, came here to UCF. I spoke to him before the season. He's only really been playing basketball for about 5 years. So this sport is still new to him. He's kind of raw. So it's kind of steps there. But with this roster, he's kind of important because he's probably their best rim protection guy, and he has been showing signs. I thought he played well. Let me ask you, were in Daytona. I thought he played his best game there against Pitt. I thought he was a difference maker. Did you agree with that being there in person?
Yes, I do agree that he was a difference maker, but he also ended up drawing a good amount of fouls while in Daytona Beach. I think in Quinnipiac was actually might have been actually his best game because he did basically the same things that he did in Pitt, but without the foul trouble. So I would argue Quinnipiac was his best game.
6-1. They will host VMI Saturday, 1 o'clock. VMI is a team that is from the SoCon, middle to bottom team. I think this is a test from this standpoint, Bryson. Don't expect a big crowd in the arena because it's going head to head against football. I think there's the majority are going to be watching football. Okay, so that's number one. You've got to create your own energy if you're UCF. Can't get looking at not, and we're going to spend more time on this on a future episode, Bryson. This is important. After this game, UCF will host Townsend. Townsend
Towson.
Towson is a team you have to circle. This is where if you're the difference is between a basketball fan and a non-basketball fan. A non-basketball fan is like Towson, who cares? But the basketball fan knows this. You know who the Field of 68 right now has currently as the number one ranked mid-major team in the country?
Towson.
Who's favored to win the CAA, the same conference that Hofstra played in, and Hofstra gave UCF fits. Towson is a team that a lot of college hoops insiders that cover the sport think is a team that can not only win the CAA, but can win a game or two in the NCAA tournament, Bryson. That's a dangerous game, Bryson. Reminds me a little bit, remember the Stetson game a couple years ago on a Sunday where Stetson just shot the lights out and upset UCF, and we're like, oh my God, what happened? Well, that year it turned out Stetson made the NCAA tournament. Towson is very similar, a better version of that. So we're going to learn a lot about that game. And my concern, Bryson, will be that probably won't be a super big crowd because people look at Towson and say, whatever. I'm telling you, that's a big test for this team. Johnny is very interesting in his scheduling because I'm glad you brought it up. His schedule is very sneaky. Because the casual fan looks at it as like, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, right? Pittsburgh. That's what jumps at you. But then he's got games like Towson on the schedule, Quinnipiac, who can win their league on the schedule. It's fascinating how he's Oakland from the Horizon, who won an NCAA tournament game a couple years ago. It's a sneaky, tricky, tough schedule there. It's manageable, but it is a tested schedule. And I think people need to realize that from that standpoint. It's Johnny's a very creative scheduler in that and he's not afraid to play some of the mid-major teams out there. And I think that gets lost in the shuffle here a little bit at times.
I mean, I feel like this is probably one of the best schedules that Dawkins has put together. Like, I mean, this is a scheduling Picasso out of him, to be honest with you, because which I think it is interesting because I think now, because now that we're a few years into the Big 12, I think we've noticed now that UCF is probably more often than not going to be a team that is a threat to steal some Big 12 games, but it isn't going to dominate the conference. It isn't going to win a lot. I think we've said it before and all the time in the past. Just getting 500 in Big 12 play is quite an accomplishment. So how do you compensate for that? You got to be able to get a good non-conference reputation going. So that way, if you do go 500 in the Big 12 play, or maybe even worse, not too much worse, but a little worse than that, then you can have a little something on your resume for the committee to see to maybe get an at-large bid out of that. And I think Dawkins has done that with his schedule.
If this team could somehow go 11-1 in this non-conference, that would be huge going into the Big 12. Because, folks, the Big 12, I think right now is the best conference in the sport. You got Houston, who's Houston, but you got Arizona, who maybe is right now the best team in college basketball with the start they've had this year, beating UConn on the road, beating Florida on the neutral court. Arizona will come to UCF. UCF will open with Kansas. Kansas just went undefeated in the Players Era tournament in Vegas without their best player. So Iowa State went under. Good. This is a gauntlet league. We got plenty of time to get into that. We'll get into that more in December and we get closer to Big 12. But that's why every game of this is so magnified because you don't want to have a slip up because you're going to need to make, to build a lot of distance in a win-loss record once you get to Big 12 play, because you're going to take some losses. I don't care how good you are. You're going to take losses in the Big 12. So it's important to have, like, if you can go, again, 11-1 in the non-conference. I'm not saying it's going to happen. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if it's 10-2, to be honest. But if they can go 11-1, 10-2 in the Big 12 play, that goes a long ways. And then hopefully maybe 7 to 8 Big 12 wins can get you in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. Certainly would get you into another postseason tournament, which I know people take for granted. But again, it's pretty remarkable. Again, this team's still learning each other. Remember, no significant minutes returned from last year's team. Like, I know Pooh played some minutes, in extended blowout time a year ago to some extent, but outside of that, that's all we have. So it's a bit of fun team. UCF VMI 1 o'clock, ESPN Plus, Austin Lyon, Michael Donnell will have the call on that. If you prefer to have the football game on and maybe let's look for the audio, go to the UCF Athletics YouTube channel. Hopefully, if I do a good enough job setting up the equipment, you'll hear my voice. I will be filling in for the great Hall of Famer Mark Daniels on the broadcast, Bryson Turner. I will be courtside.
Yes, because he's, of course, is going to be in Provo for BYU. So look at that. Hall of Famer Mark Daniels and Eric Lopez at the same broadcasting at the same time.
Very privileged. I believe I've been filling in for Mark on basketball now since 2019, I want to say. So I believe it's give and take 6 straight years, I think, something to that extent. So while the guys are in Provo, I'll hope to hold the fort. You will be over there in the media section. You and Stephen Brown will be there together. Maybe you should sit together. I don't know. Hopefully, Stephen there covering basketball. Stephen will have the coverage for Banneret. You're going to be covering it for SI. UCF, busy time. UCF, VMI, 1 o'clock tip. UCF football, 1 o'clock against BYU. How are you going to follow both at the same time, Bryson?
It's called a stat broadcast, Eric Lopez, and hopefully the Wi-Fi will be good enough in the arena that maybe I could have a stream going. So that could
You,
certainly be a help as well.
you and Steven need to work together on this because Steven's in the same boat as you. He's got to cover both for Banneret because that's just the way it is. And he was a big help at soccer. Men's soccer. We went through this a week ago where men's soccer hosted FAU in the NCAA tournament on the night where you were in Daytona. With UCF men's basketball was playing Pitt at the same time. Women's soccer was at Duke playing at the same time. Steven and I were at men's soccer, which was great because we were both able to cover the men's soccer match. He had his Apple computer. I think it's not even a computer. It's well, you know all the terms with computers and
Mac.
his Mac. Thank you.
Laptop, Mac.
Mac. He had the women's soccer game on his, and then on my laptop I had the men's basketball game on. So we were able to follow all 3 UCF sports at the same time, thankfully, with our teamwork. So that's my suggestion to both of you. Work as a team. Maybe that could get accomplished on that. But let's get to men's soccer. That was in front of a record crowd there, over 1,300. I believe it was 1,368 or 1,358. Largest men's soccer crowd ever to watch a UCF home match. They beat FAU in a thrilling match, 3-2, the final there on that one at home for the Knights. Unfortunately, their season came to an end Sunday night on the road at D.C. against the number 7 national seed in the NCAA tournament in Georgetown, losing 2-0 in that one. So the Knights men's soccer season ends in the round of 32. But make a note of this. All 5 NCAA tournament teams in the Calabrese era in men's soccer have reached at least the round of 32. So that's a cool streak. And Bryson, this season has to be considered a success. I know it's disappointing short-term losing to Georgetown, but give Georgetown credit. That's a strong team that won the Big East, which, by the way, is having a heck of an NCAA tournament in men's soccer. I believe they have 3 teams into the Sweet 16 out of the Big East already. But a heck of a year by Calabrese and company, going from 2-5-1 to going down and then down 2-0 in the quarterfinals of the Sun Belt tournament to Georgia Southern with 7 minutes left in their season in Lexington to come back and win that and then go all the way to win the Sun Belt title, win an NCAA tournament home match. A heck of a year for Calabrese and men's soccer.
Absolutely. This is a team that peaked at the absolute right time and went as far as they could go with it. I think if you are able to replicate this, but with a better draw, then I think UCF could have made another Sweet 16. And honestly, they could have made another Sweet 16 this year, considering the goal scoring opportunities they had against Georgia Southern, because they were still a really good team in transition. There was one opportunity that Nagobu just wasn't really able to get it on target, but it was just a golden opportunity for them to score. Who knows how
You're
that
talking
could have
about the
turned out?
Georgetown match. You're talking about the Georgetown match
Yeah,
on Sunday.
yes, the Georgetown match. So that was just an absolutely well played game from all aspects of them. Juan V Munoz still got two saves as well. That FAU game though, I'm definitely a little sad that I couldn't have been there, but Daytona Beach was still quite a fun game. I got to see John Bull have his best game at the time. But seeing, I'm glad that Stephen Brown got the opportunity to see a pretty hard fought game. FAU. I mean, you can't overlook that FAU men's soccer team. If you remember back in 2022 in the Supersized American, FAU beat UCF actually, which was a bit of a foreshadowing to the tough season that was 2022 for Sky Calabrese. But this season, in a way, was in a bit of a reverse in history for Scott Calabrese in some instances. If you remember a couple years ago, UCF peaked a little early in the year and managed to get to number one in the nation, first UCF sports team to do that. But then the floor ended up falling out from under them late in the year, only to get knocked out of the NCAA tournament early by a rising Vermont team at the time, who would go on to win the NCAA tournament the next season. Now, though, it was a bit of a reverse. UCF got started with a little bit flat, but then they got together and they ended up peaking at the absolute right time to steal a bid into the NCAA tournament, and arguably one of the more dramatic tournament rises I've seen covering UCF sports, and managed to make it to the a round of 32. I mean, look, considering where this team started out, the fact that the season ended like this, I think you take that. You also, I think, end up seeing the rise of several key players that I think could definitely be useful going forward. Jem Hewlett. I mean, Jem Hewlett, just as a true freshman, I've really seen him step up in the back line. I think that he could definitely be a weapon for this team. Lillian Ricole as well, really great discovery from
13
across the
goals
Atlantic.
this year. 13 goals, was the Sun
And
Belt Tournament MVP. Uh,
was
Unbelievable. Scored. It turned out was the
and
game winner. It turned out was the game winner in the Florida Atlantic game in the 58th minute of that Thursday match, because FAU had just scored to make it 2-1. He came back on a beautiful touch pass. There he was set up by Mueller, but he had a heck of a year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But also, let's not forget Clarence Outdoor. You see, Coach Calabrese managed to get him out of the transfer portal from Oregon State a few years ago, and this year he stepped up and one of the best assisters in the nation. I think he actually, if I remember right, he might have led the country in assists, or at least was close to it. I mean, this was Clarence Outdoor playing at his abs. Yeah, he led the nation with 15 assists. I mean, just literally obliterated the single season record for UCF, by the way, in assist right there. I currently have the
To
record
me,
book
he's
open
played
right
it.
now.
To me, he's played at an All-American level. We'll see if he gets those accolades or not. I don't know. He was first team Sun Belt, but he played at an All-American level.
Here it is. Here it is. So the previous single season assist record was a tie between Farid Guadiri in 1975 and Eric Vasquez, who played in the MLS, by the way, in 2003 with 12 assists. Clarence Amador got 15 this season. Just absolutely obliterated it. That single season record. So absolutely well done from Clarence Outdoor to close out his collegiate career right there. I think it'll be very interesting to see what Scott Calabrese will do next time. We'll see
Well,
how
he's
many
going to
new
play.
players he has to bring in.
He, I know he wants to play professionally, and I would like to think he's earned himself some money professionally with the way he's played this year. You and I came out with the 50-year anniversary of the UCF men's soccer all-time team, right?
Yes,
if we were able to cheat and amend it to after this season, I feel like Aguador and even Lillian Ricole, we would have to find a spot for them. That's how impactful they both were this year
I
and
think
their
so.
career.
I
And
think
Aguadar's had a good career overall. I know Lillian's just 1 year, but his 1 year is gonna be historic. It's legendary in a lot of ways. So that's my case for those two. I don't know how. I don't. I'm not saying I don't. I have no idea who we would replace and all that stuff. It would probably take hours, but I think those two become legends in UCF soccer. Would you not agree? I think those two are names that people will think about in a fondly, especially when they think of this year.
I think so. I think so. I think we all I think Drew Hansen is gonna be a UCF folk hero because of the clutch performances that he managed to make late. And then who knows, maybe we might see the birth of a new legend in Jem Hewlett. So yeah, absolutely. This was a very special group that Scott Calabrese was able to bring together this season, and it will be interesting to see what he'll be able to do again next year because this is a team that was filled with a lot of new players that Calabrese brought together. So it'll be interesting to see who he manages to get, whether it's in the transfer portal or from international pool this time, and see who he can pull in. The sky's, I think, the limit. The fact that they started as this season as bad as it was and then got to the NCAA tournament, I mean, you could next season. I think the sky's the limit.
From 2-5-1 to 11-7-3 is their final record. That's an incredible
Oh,
turnaround. The
oh,
goalkeeping is going to be a big question, right? Juan V. Munoz graduate. What a way for him to go out though with an NCAA tournament berth. But that will be a question, Bryson, of who's going to be the goalkeeper next year, and who will, that will be, I think, at the top of the list of things we'll be looking for.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, just a great season to end on, honestly. This is the most wins that UCF has had in a single season, by the way, since 2019. So that's from a win total standpoint. And yeah, I mean, from a goalkeeping standpoint, right now, currently on the roster, Wambi was a very well done, a really great leader for this team. I mean, I remember talking to him after the West Virginia game, and he was one of those players that was very like, frank about the fact that the team needed more intensity. And ever since that game, that this team has not let up. And it's just been an absolute amazing thing to watch. It really has. Like I don't know, I don't know. Here's one for you, Eric Lopez. You'll be familiar with this. Who do you think had the better mid-season comeback? Men's soccer this season or softball last season?
I mean, they're very similar, very similar. Turning it around in the second half of the year, hit some downward spirals there, but incredible run for
Yeah.
both. And men's soccer. And one of the turning points, Bryson, if you remember, early in the year, Lillian Ricole was playing on the outside on the wing, whereas Claudel Igubu was playing in the middle in the box because of his size and height. The staff made a tweak. They moved Claudel to the wing, brought Lillian inside, and really took off offensively from that point on. That's the credit to the coaching staff.
Oh yes, absolutely. Calabrese, unfortunate really that Lillian might not have that many years of eligibility for him to use because I think Lillian might be the next great UCF striker that Coach Calabrese has brought in. He brought in Cal Jennings, then he had Luca Dorado, and now he has Lillian Ricole. Unfortunately, I don't know if he'll have Lillian Ricole for very long, but I think Ricole is just as good of a finisher, I think, as the other two are. By the way, you mentioned the goalkeeping earlier. The other goalkeepers that Scott Calabrese has on the roster right now, a sophomore Timo Habak out of Germany, and then a freshman Marcelo Lacao from San Jose, Costa Rica. So unless he brings somebody in from the portal or abroad, then those are some of the options for UCF going forward.
Of course, turning our attention to women's soccer, their season ended in the round of 32 a week ago. They in Durham against the Duke Blue Devils. Tough match for UCF. Duke controlled the possession for the majority of that match, Bryson. So a tough end, a 1-0 win, a late goal late in the first half for Duke. They take the lead. They wouldn't look back, but still a heck of a year for Tiffany Roberts-Sahadak and UCF to make the NCAA tournament. One of 8 teams in the Big 12 to make it. They did win a home match in the first round of the NCAA tournament a match that you were actually at, Bryson, for this one, to beat Maine in front of the seventh largest women's soccer attended soccer match ever, the largest NCAA tournament match in UCF women's soccer history, over nearly around 1,300 attendance for that match. Kind of your thoughts on women's soccer after the end in the round of 32 to Duke.
It's been nice that both UCF soccer programs have been getting their due this season. They're some of the most historical programs on campus. I'm glad that a good amount of fans have been giving them some love this time as they both make the tournament again in the same season for the first time since 2011. It's been so long since that's happened. But as far as UCF's match against Duke, MVP for Genesis Perez Watson. I mean, 15 saves in that matchup. As much as Duke was dominating possession, Genesis Perez Watson was not letting them get in goal on that one. 15 goal saves for her. That's tied for the fourth most saves in a single match in program history. First time somebody has gotten 15 or more saves in a match for UCF since 1999. So amazing feat for Genesis Perez Watson right there, who, by the way, is still a sophomore, if memory serves me correctly on that one. Yeah, she's a redshirt sophomore, so she still has 2 seasons of eligibility left for Tiffany Roberts Sahadak on that one. And Duke only ended up winning 1-0. You know, the only reason that Duke ended up getting that goal is because they got so close to the goal, they were able to finally get it around Genesis Perez Watson in order to get it in goal right there. It was quite the goal, if I'm being honest with you. Very well done footwork there by Duke. But like you said, Eric, they just dominated possession for a majority of the contest, and they managed to pull out the win there. Great win over season overall for Coach Tiff, managing to get back to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2022. End up finishing the season. They also end up finishing the season with a going up right here 12-4-5 record. That is the most wins in a single season for a Coach Hadak team since 2017, which is the last time that Tiffany Roberts Hadak hosted an NCAA tournament match right there. So absolutely well done season from Coach Tiff, and an absolutely legendary performance out of goalkeeper Genesis Perez Watson. And I think she'll be crucial for Tiff to be able to try to build up again to try and make another NCAA tournament.
Biggest question you have in the offseason?
I the biggest question for me is who are you going to get to replace some of the transfer portal losses that you're going to get? Not well, I'm sorry, acquisitions from the transfer portal app to fill in for some losses. Like if you remember, Coach Zahadak said when we talked to her after we found out, UCF's seating when we found out they were going to host that a lot of I think the trend with them is that is bringing in really good scorers out of the transfer portal, and they managed to hit on them this year with both Rahana Reed and from Washington State and Liz Warden from Long Beach State. But now they're going to have to do that again for this year because both of them were seniors, so they'll be graduated after this season, which means either A, they're going to have to try to develop with forwards like Eddie Edom or Tyra Erickson, who had quite a solid game in the beginning of the season or they're going to have to go into the transfer portal again. And honestly, I mean, transfer portal, Tiff has done some solid jobs with the transfer portal, so I think that could potentially be kind of the future because I think the rest of the position groups are honestly pretty solid, solid except for the forward bit. Backline really anchored by Audrey Buck, Jessica McCullough, Brooke Maroney, got Hanoka Hamano and Maria Treganson in the midfield. Jada Sylvester, of course, still has some years left there. Janice Perez Watson has goalkeeper locked on that. I think another great addition, I think, in the amazing legacy that is being a UCF Knight goalkeeper. So honestly, I think that because you have the rest of these position groups really locked down, you can really spend some resources as limited as they are in soccer, to try to go after some really good forwards to get you some scoring, because I think that's been the big thing that UCF needed is scoring this season.
I will think back incredible crowds at both NCAA tournament matches, both records, probably close to 3,000 people when you combine those two matches. Bryson, I know you weren't there. That men's soccer audit crowd was the loudest, most electric crowd I've ever seen at a UCF soccer home match in my life. And I've been going to soccer matches there since '08, '07, '08. That was an amazing atmosphere for that men's soccer game. And the women's crowd, which caught me off guard. You remember I was coming later because I went to fall ball at softball, and I was like, whoa, did you see this crowd? And my eyes were like this huge. You saw my eyes blown up. Amazing support for Knight Nation, amazing support for these soccer programs. And I think, again, there's value there, Bryson. You talk about the Christmas holidays. I wish list there. We talk so much about facilities. We've talked about softball ad nauseum. I think the soccer is deserving of their facilities upgrades and renovations, man, because there's some promise there with the two soccer programs.
Well, I think so, absolutely, especially with Coach Tiff and Coach Calabrese both at the helm right there. I think that if you're able to upgrade the facilities, I think you'll get more people coming more often, because even when the crowds were low, the atmosphere that I've been a part of and I've seen have been very good for the size that it is. It's kind of like the venue in a way where yes, the crowd could be small, but they really punch above their weight when it comes to the atmosphere that they create there. And I can only imagine what, especially on the men, at least with the men's soccer front, of how it is, because I mean, those UCF men's soccer fans are a rowdy bunch. I'll tell you that. So that is, now, of course, the facility is tied to the UCF track program with Dana Boone. So that's going to be, so any question of facility upgrades for soccer are going to be hand in hand with those of track. So that's a little bit of a disadvantage that they have in that situation right there. But I think if this season has shown anything, is that soccer has shown, hey, here we are. Softball, I mean, the only reason we were talking about softball facilities as much as we have is because Cindy Ball alone has managed to build UCF into quite a softball power here. And so the fact that UCF has now gotten both their soccer programs into the into the NCAA tournament, something that only 8 other schools did this year, by the way, I think is something that can kind of help the two of them come together and go to Terry Mohajir and be able to see like, hey, I think we deserve some upgrades too.
I agree, and I think I definitely want to get into that more in depth because I know you've been following that very closely. We'll get to that in a future down the road. But I'm just saying, and again, I'm not pretending I know the answers. I just know this because we were there for the BYU game, which was a 1 o'clock Monday, the home regular season finale. There's no shade there either. It's hot, just like it's softball, and that's imagine what I think that's hurt women's soccer's attendance a little bit on their interest there. You mentioned volleyball. Well, volleyball says don't close the door yet on postseason because volleyball comes up on a Wednesday night in Manhattan, Kansas, and knocks off Kansas State in 5 sets. Actually, they just finished as we're recording this. They were winning that match without Abby Shomers, who was out, did not play in the match, was not dressed to play. She was in street clothes on the bench. Seemed to be in good spirits. I'm not going to play doctor, but let's just say there was one of the arms there that she was clearly not moving. So that's not good. The broadcast at Kansas State mentioned that she probably suffered an injury, in the last week at practice. Yet, steps in freshman Michaela Porter into the starting lineup as a setter. UCF jumps out to a 2-set lead on Kansas State, who's 32 in the RPI coming into this match. Kansas State storms back. It's their senior night. They win set 3. They blow them out seat 4 in set 4, and you're thinking, oh boy, here we go. Kansas State jumps out to an early lead in set 5, but committed 3 errors, couple service errors. It felt like it helped give UCF their footing back on, and Ava Arbor was phenomenal throughout the match, and UCF pulls it out 16-14 in 5 sets, winning the 5th set, 16-14 in the 5th set to pick up a significant win on the road against the top 35 RPI team without their starting center, Bryson. What a story. A team that we saw a week ago earlier get swept by, granted, the eventual two-time Big 12 champions, Arizona State. Basically, we left that arena at the venue thinking, all right, well, it's going to be a tall order. Probably have to win to sweep the state of Kansas to have even a shot to make the NCAA or at least get to 500 in the Big 12. But my goodness, what a win. A match, Bryson, that to me will be a nominee, I think, on the Bannerets for Match of the Year in the women's sports with volleyball.
Well, volleyball has a couple of nominee possibilities with this one. I mean, between this, Iowa State, and BYU, this has been the most roller coaster season of UCF volleyball I have seen in some time. I don't know about you, Eric Lopez, as far as the roller coaster aspect. Kansas State, by the way, was number 32 in the RPI coming into this game. I want to, by the way, I know you talk about Ava Armour, and yeah, she's been great as the volume killer all season, but don't overlook those blockers because UCF managed to outdo Kansas State 14-8 when it comes to blocks, eight of them coming from Reagan Thompson. Ella Chapman also came up with four blocks. Michaela Porter got six blocks. Michaela Porter, quite honestly, was all over the court today. 43 assists, 16 digs, six blocks. Just an absolutely amazing performance from the freshman in her first start at the position. Let's not forget the other freshman, Alexa Haley, who's there at the libero, who came up with 17 assists there. So I mean, there are two freshmen in this starting lineup, Eric, in a Big 12 game against the number 32 team in the RPI, and they won. This is a UCF volleyball team that has truly defied expectation this season in both directions because this is also the same team that lost to Brown and Texas Tech. So this is the most roller coaster UCF volleyball season I've seen in quite some time.
21 kills for Ava Armour to lead the way. Porter was 43 assists. You mentioned, don't forget the 16 digs.
Yeah.
16 digs, six blocks. That's
I mean,
incredible. That is incredible. Like she was
start.
Yeah. Holy macro. Future's bright there. Stepped right in. Skylar English, 17 kills, 16 digs. A heck of a win for this ball club. Shaylee Myers is probably going to be first team All Big 12 for Kansas State. Had 22 kills, but it had 8 errors. And, man, they did a heck of a job. They held Kansas State to under 200 hitting for the match. UCF was down a match point, scored the last 3 points. Armour took over. A memorable match. I know you and I will debate it in the coming months. I think this is the more exciting match. Just considering the circumstances, you're without your starting setter, and you're on the road at Kansas State on senior night, you find a way to win this match in 5 sets. It's remarkable, and it keeps perhaps some hope going into Kansas. Now they sit a game below 500 at 8-9.
In conference play.
In conference play. And now for the first time, Bryson, as we're recording this, I am checking the updated unofficial. I have a site that has the unofficial RPI rankings. All the matches are complete as of Wednesday night. This is as of Wednesday night, Bryson Turner. Going into the match, UCF was 62 in the RPI. As a result of this win, they're 57. So they move up 5 spots to 57. Now remember, Cincinnati lost to Arizona State in 4 sets on Wednesday night. They're at 44 in the RPI as I quickly glance through the Big 12 standings here. 44 for Cincinnati. Arizona swept West Virginia on Wednesday night. They're 42 in the RPI. Utah lost to BYU in 5 sets. They're at 39 with a 500 overall record, 14-14. You got to be above 500 to be NCAA tournament eligible. By most prognostics, including Charlie Cream at ESPN, Arizona State is a lock. I think Kansas is a lock. The questions with those two is how high of a seed are they going to get on Selection Sunday, this Sunday night. BYU's a lock. Do they get to be a seed? That's a question. TCU's a lock. Colorado is a lock. Iowa State's a lock. Baylor's a lock. Some people think Kansas State needed this match to win to lock it up. Their RPI only dropped to 34, but it does make you wonder, does Kansas State need to win their finale against Iowa State, I believe, to lock up a spot? A lot of people have been projecting 8 from the Big 12 with Cincinnati on the outside looking in. But it does make you wonder, Bryson, big if, UCF were to do the unthinkable and upset Kansas, who's 14 in the RPI, ranked in the top 25, in Lawrence on senior day. If they were to upset Kansas, get to 9-9 in a conference that's the number one conference in volleyball, even if you think the Big Ten's better, it's no worse than number 2. Would that be enough to perhaps steal a bid and slip in as the last 4 in? That's the question, but at least give this group a credit, Bryson. They've given themselves a chance to enter the conversation going into the final weekend of the season.
Absolutely. And if you can give this team any credit, that's what they did. Now, if you remember, it's a shame that Abby Shomers is injured because she remembers the last time UCF was in Lawrence against Kansas. They upset them then last year. McKenna Melville, Abby Shomers was just a true freshman at the time in that match. They're going to have to win in Lawrence once again in order to have a chance at making the NCAA tournament. Kansas, by the way, ranked number 14 in the RPI right now. Kansas State 32. I think a win against Kansas will certainly put UCF in a very good position. I think you said what, 8? You said
Right
teams in
now,
the Big 12.
eight are going to get into the Big 12. The question is, does a Cincinnati get in? Does or maybe a UCF if they were to beat Kansas? Could they get a ninth team in? It's hard to tell. I think
Well,
UCF has to win the Kansas match. There is no. I would be stunned if they lose to Kansas and still slip in. Although I'll read off the UCF resume at this minute as it looks. They have a win at BYU, who's right now 21 in the RPI. This is the updated RPI numbers after Wednesday. They have a win against Iowa State at home. They're 23 in the RPI. They have a win against Cincinnati, who is at 48 in the RPI. So, and now you've got a win that you're adding against Kansas State, who's 36 in the latest RPI as of Wednesday night. That would normally get you in, Bryson. That would normally get in. The problem is what is probably going to keep them out, Bryson, at the end of the day, is what you mentioned earlier. The loss to Brown on September 14th at home. Brown's RPI 159 as of right now. And then the loss at home on October 25th to Texas Tech, who has a 185 RPI, Bryson. 185. In a match where UCF actually won the first set pretty comfortably and somehow inexplicably just faltered and lost the next 3 sets. To me, Bryson, if they win those 2 home matches, both at home, if they win those 2 matches, Bryson, I think we're talking an NCAA tournament team.
I think you're absolutely right. It's like I said, this is the most roller coaster season I've seen out of UCF volleyball in quite a long time because you lose matches like that, Brown and Texas Tech, and yet you win against BYU, Iowa State, and Kansas State on the road. I think another factor you might want to keep an eye on there is the position that Iowa State, BYU, and Cincinnati end up being at the end of this season in the RPI rankings because right now these are 2 quad 1 wins and 1 quad 2 win. But Cincinnati is really bordering on quad 2, quad 3 territory, while Iowa State and BYU are kind of both teetering on quad 1. So I think that this last match for both of them, Iowa State, you mentioned Iowa State playing Kansas. I think Iowa State is probably going to need a win in order to maybe stay in quad 1. I think BYU probably needs a win in order to stay in quad 1. Those teams are going to need to stay quad 1 wins if UC and Cincinnati's going to need to stay a quad 2 win if UCF is going to have a chance at getting into the NCAA tournament. Because if you have 3 quad 1 wins, you're going to be very hard to ignore, especially when it's in the highest conference RPI in college volleyball right now.
Cincinnati finishes at Arizona that might be a must win for Cincinnati to have a shot to make the NCAA tournament. Arizona is 46 in the RPI. Bryson, that could be a bubble game. That could be a winner is in, losers out of the NCAA tournament between Arizona and Cincinnati. The problem UCF has, remember, they lost Arizona at home in 4 sets, split with Cincinnati, with the home teams winning in 3 sets in both matches. But Cincinnati has a cleaner resume than UCF. They don't have the bad losses to Texas Tech and Brown of caliber like UCF does. Arizona, interestingly, Arizona and UCF both lost to Texas Tech.
What
Just
is
crazy.
man? What is it? Man, what is it about the Red Raiders going up right there? Goes to show you how tough the Big 12 is, though. I mean, like who would have thought the Big 12 would be the #1 college volleyball conference this season? I mean, that's a shock right there.
Saturday, of course, Saturday, UCF will be in Lawrence taking on Kansas. I believe it's 2 o'clock for serve.
Yes, yes.
What do we? Why?
All it's the last. This has to be the longest equinox in your recent memory for you, Eric.
Thankfully, our very own Cassidy will be covering that volleyball match. I mean, I'm sure you're going to peek at it, Bryson. You're going to take a peek at it.
Oh,
I can't. I
absolutely.
can't. I'm going to be on the air. I'm going to be on the air on that one. But if UCF were to do this, Bryson, to get to 500 in the Big 12, all of a sudden, Sunday's selection show becomes a lot more interesting, Bryson.
Oh yeah, it very much does. I'll be very, very interested to see if what they'll be able to do in this one because if you look at conference record at conference record currently so right now, the teams that are a lock in the Big 12 right now are the ones that are above 500. Even Kansas, by the way, Kansas at 9-8 is what 9-8 in Big 12 play right now. They're above 500, and people think that they're locked. But the teams that are in the bubble right now are all of the ones that are at 500 or close around that time. Like now BYU, I think is what nine. BYU is not 9-8 now, right? BYU's 9-8. Arizona, are they 9-8?
I don't have that in front of me. I don't have the standings all completely in front of me. I don't. I think they're at 500, but I'm not sure.
Okay,
Uh,
so okay, I'm just looking at this confer at the conference
I
records on
got
the
it. I got it
RPI
right
page.
here. Hold on. Arizona's 9-8. Arizona's nine
Yeah.
and eight. Cincinnati 7-9. UCF's 8-9. Is that right? No, Cincinnati. I think is 10
No,
and 10. Excuse me. Uh,
I'm
Utah
talking.
six
Yeah,
and 11. Kansas State's 9-8 in Big 12 play. So there. That's a good call by you. Everybody that's in the field as of now that's projected to be in is above 500 or above in the Big 12. It's kind of your point you're making there.
yes, yes. Utah, by the way, came into this week 6-10. So that'll be certainly a bit of a conundrum for the committee to
Well,
face
they're
right
at
there at their
500
RPI.
overall. Yeah, they got to finish above 500 overall. They're 14 and 4. I think that loss to BYU is probably going to knock them out. The thing that makes them unique is they have 5 top 50 wins. Them and Arizona have 5 top 50 wins as of Wednesday night. UCF's at 4. Cincinnati's at 3. They're
Ooh, so
all
you so
they're in the bubble.
if UCF can beat Kansas, then that would tie them up with
Well,
that, right? The
which
top
is
50.
why, yes, which is why we both said they got us, and even Matt Botsford in a post game we were at the Arizona State match kind of alluded to that. They felt like you got to win both of those because, again, you get to 500 in the Big 12, boy, it's a hard to leave them out. And I think if they were to beat Kansas, their RPI is 57, as I told you. I would like to think a win against Kansas gets you maybe closer to 50.
UCF's RPI is 57, so it would get that to 50. Kansas's RPI, by the way, is 14.
That's what I'm saying. A win over Kansas maybe gets you close to 50. I think the committee would slip them in as a last team in that scenario.
Well,
They've let teams in the low 50s before. It's not ideal, but it has happened.
well, if you remember, I remember Coach Calabrese was talking to us before, like just after getting off the bus, coming back from the Sun Belt tournament, and I remember that one thing I believe he said. I think in that conference, or one thing I was talking about, I think why we thought that they were going to be in is the last 10 matches. because you look what UCF men's soccer did. Their last 10 matches, they got wins over the likes of Georgia Southern, and then you had the tournament matches against Marshall and Kentucky. So they were clearly one of the best teams at that time. UCF volleyball, meanwhile, let's look at their last few matches. The last few matches, they have wins against Kansas State, wins against Iowa State, and then, of course, BYU. I think BYU goes into the last 10. It might be bordering on that. But since basically in the last, let's say, 4 weeks, about 4 weeks, they've beaten BYU, Iowa State, and Kansas State. If you add a win against Kansas in there, then that's going to be very hard to deny just from a momentum standpoint. I mean, this is a really big charge out of them.
And again, you would get to 500 overall. Now, the negative is, I think during Texas Tech was October 25th. I don't know if that's like a month ago. So, again, let's see what they could do
It
here.
was before BYU though. It was before
It
BYU.
was before BYU, so, but they got to win this Saturday. I don't know. I mean, unless you tell me if you disagree with me, I don't think if they lose to Kansas, I think they're out. They're not getting
Yeah,
in.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, no, they'll be out. I think
Because I think
I
their
think
RPI,
anyone
yeah, I don't think their RPI would take a hit with a loss, but I don't think it would move up. So
no.
let's just say the RPI stays around the same spot, 57, 56. To me, that's too high for them to get in. I don't see the committee doing that.
I think it's most likely that anyone that finishes below 500 in Big 12 play is out.
I think that's a fair. I think that's something to monitor on Selection Sunday. The other issue they have, tell me, Bryson, maybe you can look this up real quick. We're really ad-libbing this, folks. I swear, we weren't planning on talking this much volleyball, but the team decided to win a match, so of course this is what happens. But I'm looking at the UCF non-conference schedule. Their best win in the non-conference right now, if you go based on RPI, as of right now, is probably Arkansas State at 53, who
Oh
went.
man, to make it if that could be a quad two win.
Well, check to see how they're doing. Did they end up winning the Sun Belt? Is the question I have for you, because that could certainly play a factor. Part of that, but that could be also part of the problem they have, because their other non-conference wins. You got FIU 79, Alabama, who's under 500 or barely at 500 overall. They're at 100. And then, you got your Chattanoogas and the Memphis and Riverside and Norfolk and the 200, 300s. Stetson's in the 200s. And again, the Brown loss really just
Mhm.
kills you there.
They
But Arkansas State, I remember that was a match. That was a team that was a very good mid-major team. They just missed the tournament a year ago. I don't know if they ended up winning the Sun Belt or not.
they did. They
Well,
did. They beat James Madison 3-1 in the championship.
that helps UCF because in the committee's eyes, that's a tournament team that they beat in 3 sets. I don't believe FIU. I'm going to assume that FIU did not have the same success in the CUSA tournament. FAU, I know, didn't because Tulsa
Mm,
won the American and stole a bid from somebody. That's the other thing that hurts UCF, by the way. There were some upsets in other conferences in the last week, like Tulsa winning the American, that likely will steal bids from a bubble team. But
yeah, absolutely. FIU lost in the Conference USA tournament to Western Kentucky.
that's not going to help you. But the Arkansas State win is good, so we'll see. Anything's possible. Again, UCF, Kansas, 2 o'clock, Bryson. I can't believe it, but it's a big match. It's a big match. They win
You know,
that. They win that. Now we both are going to have to watch the selection show Sunday night, which will be on ESPN, and just wonder if they make the tournament. The other thing, let's mention this because you have brought this up, I believe, off air, maybe even on air. There is another
it,
volleyball tournament, the NIVC, which UCF participated in 2017. In fact, you brought this up before we started recording, because technically that is the last time all three fall UCF sports, men's soccer, women's soccer, and volleyball, made the postseason in the same year. Was 17. Men's and women's soccer made the NCAA. Volleyball made the NIVC tournament. The last time that the three UCF teams made the NCAA tournament in the same year was 2003. We looked it up before the show. Now, the NIVC is like the NIT used to be in basketball. You do have to spend money to be in it, especially to host Bryson. They did it in 2017. They did not do it, from what my sources told me, in 2023. Lord knows we've spent a ton of time on this podcast, and I'm sure any other UCF shows that you listen about the finances and the budgets and resources at UCF, Bryson. I personally don't think they would accept a bid to the NIVC because I think they don't want to. I think from a financial standpoint, they don't want to burn money that way. I think they rather use that, and with the portal opening up and things like that. Do you agree or disagree? Do you see the other side of it of, hey, you should reward this team, they earned a spot in a postseason? Where do you stand on that?
I think it's going to be a question of what Botsford wants to do. I think Botsford's opinion on the matter is going to be crucial on this because I think if he pushes for it, I think they might do it because this is a team that is you can tell that Coach Botsford's trying to build for the future. I mean, the fact that he's played as many freshmen as he has, Alexa Haley, Michaela Porter, Reese Moore, these are players that are going to be that he probably wants to have here for the long haul. And I think that the more
And
opportunities
they could
that you can
benefit,
get to
right?
practice,
Benefit
yeah,
to another week or two, right?
yes, exactly. So I think that if Coach Botsford thinks that they need more reps and he pushes for it, then I think that they'll get UCF to maybe put some money in there. Heck, I mean, knowing him, I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to put something up himself or something like that if UCF isn't willing to put all of it up. It's again, I think it really is a matter of does he want to do it or not. If he thinks that maybe that they don't need the tournament, if he thinks that they are fine and that they're fine, then yeah, then I think UCF is like, all right, well, if you don't think we need it, if you're
Well,
good, then we're good.
well, and the players too will likely like, hey, do we want to be a part of this, or like, nah, we're good. Also, will play a factor in
Yeah,
that. And again,
no, you're
listen,
right.
well, look, in fairness, we don't know how much it costs. What's the cost? So that also plays a factor on the finances. So we'll see what happens. But that we might be busy on Sunday night, Bryson. Just you realize that we could be a lot busier on Sunday night than we anticipated.
Oh
Hopefully we
yeah.
are. Hopefully we are. Again, Saturday, 2 o'clock, UCF, Kansas, ESPN Plus. Just because we need another UCF sport going on. All right, we've gone long. Bryson, promote what's coming. Nightcap next week's gonna be busy. Could have volleyball stuff. I know women's basketball's out in Puerto Rico. Kind of tease what to look for here in the coming weeks in the Banneret here.
Yes. So, of course, be sure to check out the most recent nightcap where we wrapped up the soccer teams as well as what volleyball and women's basketball have been up to. Next nightcap, it will just be volleyball and women's basketball as we mentioned. We recap volleyball's escapades in the state of Kansas as well as women's basketball as they beat at FAMU and then playing in Puerto Rico. At the time we were recording this, they beat East Carolina to start that tournament. They have two more matches before to wrap that up in Puerto Rico in Wake Forest and Rice. So be sure to check out Nightcap to get all of the recap on that. Our own Cassidy Mills is going to be monitoring that. She's done a great job with women's basketball and volleyball too, honestly. So that'll be a great nightcap there once that goes up. Also, please be sure to check out UCF Knights on SI for my coverage on UCF football and men's basketball as they both play at the same time this Saturday at 1 p.m., one in the Mountain Time Zone in Provo and one in Addition Financial Arena. Should be sure to follow me on my exit at It's Bryson Turner because I'm also going to be, following along with all of what's going on. I'm going to be very busy on the computer on Saturday, Eric Lopez. That's going to be a fun day.
Yeah, you may have to text me updates. I don't know what we're going to see. I will be calling men's basketball. For those watching on YouTube, those are my note charts I'm working on as we speak. Those are my chart as I'm working on for basketball as they take on VMI. 1 o'clock, I'll be on the UCF YouTube channel, audio broadcast. Football, ESPN2 will also be on iHeart on the app as well as 96.9. All the details on UCFKnights.com. BlackandGoldBanneret.com. We'll have full coverage of the football game against BYU. We'll have coverage of basketball, Stephen Brown, volleyball. It is wild times And I promise everybody, Bryson and I will still have a show down the road in December. We'll talk baseball, softball, fall ball, and kind of what we've learned and what to expect, because that calendar is going to flip before you know it. But hey, Bryson, officially happy Thanksgiving. As we finish recording, it is Thanksgiving. Enjoy it with your family. I hope everybody enjoys Thanksgiving and Black Friday. And enjoy the UCF Athletics on Saturday on that one, sir.
Oh yes, Thanksgiving weekend is always a fun one for a UCF fan, even if the War on I-4 isn't a part of it, and this season definitely is showing that.
Looks like they lose their coach, so they got other bigger issues to follow. For Bryson Turner, and I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you soon. And enjoy the weekend of UCF Athletics. This has been Night Shift. Follow us at blackgoldbanneret.com. Charge on, and good night.